There are certain key questions. Key questions. And I might call them core questions, but they're not really core questions. They're key questions. They're the keys to the unlocking the core questions. So, I mean, your key and your door are not the same thing. The key is a much bigger thing than the door is a much bigger thing than the key. But the key unlocks the door. And so, it can be very important to have your keys. Otherwise, you end up being locked out. And among the key questions that we have in our society, which our society, and particularly as expressed by the so-called news services, deliberately tries to shun, and that's exactly, just deliberately shuns the key questions that we have in our society that we need to ask. Among these are the question of, if somebody is hit by a high-powered rifle bullet capable of splitting open their head, and the impact of this bullet on their head causes their head to be thrust violently backwards, violently towards away from their chest and into the direction of the back of their head. Okay? The opposite direction of the way that their face is facing. The key question is, where is it likely that that bullet came from? Is it likely that bullet came from the direction of their face going backward? Or is it more likely that that bullet came from behind their head, traveling forward in the direction that the person is facing? That is a key question, because the answer to that question opens up the whole question of whether the bullet that killed John F. Kennedy in 1963 in Texas could have come from the Texas Book Depository, 6 stories up and several hundred feet behind John F. Kennedy, where Lee Oswald was alleged to have been situated at the window with his single bullet, single fired, single shot, one bullet and then reload rifle. This is in 1963, 200 years after the Minutemen stood on Lexington Common with single fire muskets that after you fired them once, you had to shove more gunpowder in and throw another little musket ball in and shove it down there to reload it. 200 years later, Lee Oswald had a $12 mail order rifle that you had to reload after each bullet in this manner. And with that rifle, he was alleged to have fired 3 bullets in rapid succession that thrust John F. Kennedy's head backward direction toward the direction of where the bullet allegedly came from? That is a key question. But our wonderful, informative news industry, mega-billion-dollar industry, has more important things to be posing questions, to be posing to all of us. Questions like, what does Jennifer Love Hewitt look like without makeup? Or questions like, oh my God, how does Beyonce have the daring guts to be able to wear flat shoes and cut her own hair? Oh my God, we must know the answer to these urgent and pressing and astounding questions. But the key question of which direction does a head that has been blown apart by a rifle bullet naturally tend to move backwards in the direction of where the bullet originated? That's a question we don't have the time or the resources to look into. Another key question is when a tall building, a very, very tall building, a building which is perpendicular, is impacted from the side. Are these buildings, such buildings that were built 4 decades ago in the 1970s, were they designed with the built-in design structure that when impacted from the side by a large moving object, a large, fairly large, and a large object moving with momentum and force, the force of matter, of mass and momentum, hit from the side, are these designed to collapse straight down like a house of cards? Or does it require pre-planted explosives to cause this type of reaction to this type of impact? That is a key question. That might not be a key question if two such towers had been impacted this way and only one of them had reacted in this manner of falling straight down, and the other one had toppled as you might expect if you kicked over a tall object, even a tall house of cards. You might expect it not to fall straight down, but to be smashed outwardly, opposite of the direction from which it was impacted. That is a key question. When two buildings both react in the identical manner, falling straight down, is that a natural reaction, physical reaction for this type of structure and this type of impact? That becomes a key question. But of course, our news media doesn't have the resources or the space to devote or the time to devote to investigating these sort of things when there are much more pressing questions that we must know the answers to, such as Jennifer Love Hewitt without makeup, or Mila Kunis without makeup, or Beyonce cuts her own hair. Oh my God, she cut her own hair. Oh my God, it's incredible. How could she do such a thing? These are things that the general public must be focused on. Or other questions such as, how How will Jennifer Aniston react to the marriage of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, who have been effectively common law marriage for at least 7 years, more like a decade, or is it 15 years? Who knows? It seems like forever. These are the important things that the news media must keep us focused on, to keep us distracted from the key questions, such as, when impacted from behind by a rifle bullet, is it natural for a human head to have the reflex of being thrust backward, or is it more natural for a head in that instance to be thrust forward, and a head being thrust backward indicate the bullet coming from the opposite direction? And the key question of, when a very tall skyscraper is impacted by a large flying object from one side, is it natural for that tall object, that tall skyscraper, to collapse straight down? Or is it not? Is it more natural for, in that instance, that the skyscraper should topple more in the opposite direction from which it was impacted? So please continue to tell us the important things such that we must know, such as Jennifer Love Hewitt without makeup, or Kim Kardashian, or some other Kardashian, this or that, flashing their tits at us for no apparent reason other than the fact that they have tits, whether they're real or not. We must know those things. The American public must be distracted with those things.